This podcast is made possible by you, the supporters of WPLN and WNXP, Nashville Public Radio. This is the Nashvillager Podcast. It's July 15th, 2025. On this day in 1844, Charles Goodyear obtained a patent for a process called rubber vulcanization. Basically, that's the way that you can heat up natural rubber, the sticky, elastic sap of the rubber tree, with something like sulfur as an additive, and end up with the kind of rubber that's useful as a commercial product for making all kinds of things, including tires. I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee with historical context from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. Well, a Rutherford County factory that handled an awful lot of rubber over the years closed at the start of the month, several weeks earlier than we'd expected. The Bridgestone plant in LaVergne made big tires for trucks and buses. More than 650 people worked there. What we're hearing is that they'll have full pay and benefits through the end of the month, since they'd been told their jobs would continue through then. And it sounds like the union is still negotiating the terms of their layoff packages. Some of the workers will get preference for open positions at other Bridgestone plants, but that would involve moves out of state. So that's a lot for those folks to consider as they figure out what to do next. Now, that factory was open for a little more than 50 years. And over those decades, there were some pretty rocky stretches. And in fact, it seems that labor relations at that factory got so intense at one point that it basically had ripple effects throughout the industry. Now, when the factory first opened in 1973, it was owned by Firestone, an American company trying to figure out how to compete with the foreign tire makers that were making huge inroads into this nation's marketplace. But according to Rubber News, Firestone struggled to make a good product at that factory. And it struggled to keep its workers happy, too. The employees joined the URW, that's the United Rubber Workers Union. They went on strike, a really long strike. Firestone laid off a few hundred people, and the factory basically went dark for a long while. And that's the mess of a situation it was in when the Japanese competitor, Bridgestone, bought the plant in 1981. They renovated the line, brought back workers, and in 1983 started making tires there again. And actually, they would end up taking over all of Firestone and establishing a North American headquarters here in Nashville. But that's not really the story I'm trying to tell today. Anyway, at the factory in LaVergne, Bridgestone and the URW had a few years of pretty good cooperation in the 80s. Evidently, a lot of folks in the industry considered it a great example of what positive labor relations could look like. But it didn't really translate into the results the company needed for their bottom line. And so once again, things got tense. In 1991, Bridgestone and the URW negotiated a master contract that applied to all of the tire makers' factories in the U.S., and the next year, workers in LaVergne decided they should make a little more than that. They went on strike for 17 days before going back to work on the company's terms. But even though things had ended in Bridgestone's favor, the folks in the head office back in Japan were not interested in letting it go. It seems like that strike really pissed them off, and a new team of leaders from Japan were sent to LaVergne. That turned out to be the opening salvo in what would become a really big falling out between the company and the union a couple of years later. But this time it was across all of Bridgestone's U.S. facilities. And things went so far south that to this day, folks in the industry call that contract fight the War of '94. It was a battle that lasted more than a year. And when all was said and done, the URW was done as an independent union. It merged with the much larger United Steelworkers. And that is the union currently working to sort things out on behalf of those hundreds of LaVergne workers who get their last paycheck at the end of this month. In just a few minutes, the latest developments in the legal fight over the size of Nashville's Metro Council. That's coming up after the newscast.
At WPLN, we tell stories about honoring our families.
If he become a monk, that means that mom and dad will go to heaven when they pass away.
And preserving memories.
I never heard of a Rosenwald School. Nobody's never told me that's where I went.
I'm Char Daston, and my reporting connects you with your neighbors. and the important moments in their lives.
Here's the latest from WPLN News. The Senate voted along party lines to confirm a Tennessee attorney as President Donald Trump's first judicial pick of his second term. Whitney Hermendorfer, who worked for the Tennessee Attorney General, will serve as a judge for the 6th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. The court has upheld Tennessee laws surrounding drag shows and the ban on gender-affirming care for transgender minors. Hermendorfer has defended Trump's policies in her prior role, including his bid to end birthright citizenship. Her office has also defended the state's strict abortion ban. Last year, then-President Joe Biden had nominated Nashville attorney Carla Campbell to fill the same seat on the appeals court, but she was not confirmed. Tennessee is scheduled to execute Byron Black in 3 weeks. Black has a heart condition, so his doctors installed a complex implant designed to shock his heart if it stops working. WPLN's Catherine Sweeney reports a county judge is hearing arguments this week about whether the state has to remove that implant before putting Black to death.
Black's attorneys spent the better part of Monday making their case. They said the implant could set off a series of painful shocks as he dies. Attorneys and witnesses raised several safety concerns. There's a setting where a magnet can disable the shocks. That's what the Department of Corrections said it could do. But a medical expert said implants like Black's often have that setting turned off. The expert explained that pentobarbital ultimately kills people by stopping their breathing, but in the process, it tends to disrupt the heartbeat in a way that would trigger the shocks. She also testified that pentobarbital has no pain-killing effects, so Black would feel the shocks if they did happen. Catherine Sweeney, WPLN News.
The state will make its arguments in a virtual hearing on Wednesday. It's unclear how long a ruling would take. Black's execution is slated for August 5th. Metro Nashville police say 41 people were arrested for making threats of mass violence against Metro Nashville schools during the last school year. The Tennessean reports this is a significant increase in arrests from last year when only 12 people were arrested. The arrests range from students as young as 11 years old to adults in their 40s. Tennessee lawmakers have increased the penalties for making so-called threats of mass violence against schools over the years. This despite pushback and investigations from WPLN and ProPublica finding that the laws were ensnaring kids with disabilities into the justice system over jokes, rumors, and misunderstandings. The Tennessean reports that while the threat of mass violence arrests rose, arrests for bringing guns onto school property decreased slightly. Meanwhile, many Tennessee kids no longer feel safe in school. From threats of gun violence to fear about ICE raids, they're asking lawmakers how they plan to keep them safe. WPLN's Camelia Burris reports.
With 2 school shootings in the last 2 years, families want to know what leaders are doing to prevent more tragedies.
Hi, my name is Tommy. How are you going?
This is Tommy. He wanted to know how lawmakers are going to keep kids safe and tell them that they will be safe. Tommy was one of the youngest to speak at the town hall. It was hosted by Congresswoman Ilhan Omar and Representative Justin Jones. Jones says he's disappointed that the Republican supermajority passed limited gun reform. He says that showed they place profits over people.
After the mass shooting at Covenant, there's only one piece of gun legislation that was passed in the Tennessee House of Representatives and in the Tennessee Senate, and that was to protect gun manufacturers from liability, not to protect our children, not to protect our community. That is shameful.
Jones also says that the recent ICE raids have increased anxiety and fear among immigrant and undocumented families.
Some of them have come to my office and families who are afraid to drive their children to school because they don't know if they'll be stopped. They don't know if they'll be charged under this new law that says you cannot harbor immigrants.
Some Tennessee teachers are reporting more immigrant students are missing classes. Jones also says that Tennessee has more anti-LGBTQ laws hurting students than any other state in the country, and protecting them should be a priority. Camelia Burris, WPLN News.
More than 100 dogs have been rescued in Cheatham County from what authorities are calling an extreme hoarding and breeding operation. WKRN reports authorities found a variety of breeds, including Yorkshire Terriers, Maltese, Poodles, and so-called designer mixes. Many of the dogs were extremely malnourished, matted, or soaking wet with urine. There were also several confirmed cases of parvovirus. The Cheatham County District Attorney's Office is working with investigators to review evidence before any of the dogs are cleared for adoption. It's not yet known what criminal charges, if any, the homeowner may face. Well, drivers, take heed and slow down. Operation Southern Slowdown is in effect now through Sunday. That means more law enforcement will be out, hoping to be a deterrent to speeders. The Tennessee Highway Safety Office says state troopers here will be on alert, as well as officers across Alabama, Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina. According to the national statistics, more than 11,000 people were killed in crashes across the country in 2023, and speeding was a factor in almost 30% of fatal crashes. A Memphis area high schooler and 2 University of Tennessee pitchers are headed to the St. Louis Cardinals. Sunday was the first day of the draft for Major League Baseball. High school outfielder Ryan Mitchell was selected by the Cards in the second round, 55th overall. University of Tennessee's left-handed pitcher Liam Doyle was the 5th overall pick, and his teammate, right-handed pitcher Tanner Franklin, was 72nd overall. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. In 2023, state legislators passed a law that would slash the size of Nashville's 40-member Metro Council. Metro's been fighting this in court, but the latest ruling sided with a smaller council. Now Metro is requesting to take the case to the Tennessee Supreme Court. WPLN Cynthia Abrams reports Metro is citing constitutional violations and the original reasons for having a large council.
Nashville's Metro Council has consisted of 40 members since Metro's inception more than 60 years ago, as touted in an early State of Metro address.
I'm proud to say the job of consolidation has been done.
In 1963, Nashville became the first metropolitan government in the United States. When voters approved the consolidation of the city and the county, the size of the council was a factor. Having 40 members helped voters get on board, particularly those concerned about representation of Black Nashvillians.
The number 40 is not some random number. There's a history behind it.
That's Wally Dietz, Metro's law director.
And it has to do to making sure that our council is reflective of the residents who live here.
The history is just one of the reasons city leaders and many council members are against a smaller body. The council is made up of 35 district council members, plus 5 at-large, who are elected by the whole city. It is the third largest council in the country, although many places have separate city and county governments. Councilmember Delicia Porterfield contends the size of the body helps ensure diversity.
The council very closely represents many demographics of our city and county. So we have council members that identify as Black, immigrant. We have our first Haitian American. We have a Vietnamese American council member. We have
Porterfield says that even if racial diversity was maintained in a smaller council, socioeconomic diversity would be lost.
When you reduce the size of a council, you risk making those races significantly more expensive.
With candidates campaigning for fewer seats, campaigns become more competitive and start to cost more. This can be a barrier for working-class candidates. There's also concern about larger districts, whether in population or just sprawl, making it harder to connect with constituents. And there's also the feeling that this law is against the will of the people who voted in 1962. Here's Councilmember Zulfat Swara.
This ruling, if it stays, is a slap on that history, the intentionality of the people of Nashville wanting a government that is representative.
Not only did voters create the 40-member body 60 years ago, but they also upheld that size in 2015, when a referendum sought to shrink it.
If the people of Davidson County feel like the council is too big for whatever reason, then the state should have allowed us to go to the ballot and for the people of Davidson County to vote.
In passing the new law, the state argued that smaller councils are more efficient. House Majority Leader William Lamberth sponsored the legislation back in 2023.
20 is the maximum because you will find very few successful and effective cities or any group, quite frankly, that goes beyond 20. Group dynamics get to a point where it simply doesn't work very well together.
The law caps all councils in Tennessee at 20. And while it applies to the whole state, Nashville is the only council bigger than that. So, in their request to the Supreme Court, Metro argues that it is unfairly targeting them. They're also arguing that Tennessee's constitution gives metros the power to set their own council size, and that it's voter ballot measures that can change them over time. Here's Dietz.
The Constitution gives them that right, and it's up to the people of Nashville, not the legislators, to decide the size of our legislative body.
Metro Legal has compiled all of those arguments into its request to appeal to the Tennessee Supreme Court. However, the Supreme Court doesn't have to take the case. And if they don't, that's it. Nashville's Metro Council will be cut in half for the 2027 election. In that case, there would be some debate around what the new council districts would look like and how many at-large countywide members there would be. Metro actually did rush to draft new maps back in 2023 when the law initially passed.
We are having conversations about what happens if the worst-case scenario happens.
For now, Nashville has 2 more years of its 40-member body. But the large council could be on the line if the Supreme Court doesn't take the case or doesn't side with the city. Cynthia Abrams, WPLN News.
Thanks for listening to the Nashvillager podcast. We take this look at Nashville news every weekday. If you like it, go ahead and subscribe on your favorite podcasting app and tell a friend or give us a mention on your socials. It really helps get the word out. And of course, everything at WPLN News is listener supported. You can become a member at WPLN.org. And that's it for today. Thanks so much for listening. Let's make this day a good one, and we'll catch back up tomorrow.